great big beautiful world out there. And here I sit, sucking on popsicles.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Imbasciani Chronicles. We're just on a roll here now. It's been very nice. And we have a very special guest, another very special guest in the seat here with me. No rides in the car today, I'm sorry. But Dean and I are going to be going to Mazzaro's again very soon. But I'm here with art conservator Emily Brown. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So we have a connection via Dean Napolitano. And we've met a few times, and you have a very cool job. And
I do.
That is an art conservationalist, I'll say it that way. We'll get into all that exactly. Currently at the Ringling Museum in Sarasota.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. So, real quick, what is the basic, elevator pitch of what your job is?
I like to tell people that if you think about a doctor, like you go to the doctor for a checkup, and if you have problems, you go to the doctor to fix yourself. Yeah. That's basically what I do, but I do it for art.
Okay.
So I think that's the quickest way to get across what I do, because I think what I tend to do is rather abstract for a lot of people who aren't in academia. What I do is very academic.
Right.
But I essentially take care of the art in institutions, art that people have, just in their own private collections, family heirlooms. I can do that as well. Anything that's physical, a physical object that needs care, I can provide that care.
And so it's not necessarily restoration, though. That is, I would assume, part of the job. It's conserving what is already there.
It is. I also restore, and restoration is a big part of the job. I think it depends on where you are as a conservator. Me working in museums most of my career, I've done more of the conserving part than maybe the restoring part.
Okay.
Touching objects is actually a very small percentage of my time.
Right, because I would assume with these priceless historic artifacts that are sometimes hundreds and hundreds of years old, you want to touch them, as little as possible.
Yes. There's also a lot of research and work and administration and documenting and photography and that goes into deciding what to do to an object to restore it or conserve it, and then the after of that, so documenting all of that.
So if you have I would assume in your description when you were just on, it was ABC, right?
ABC 7.
ABC 7 local news,
Sarasota.
Talking about what you guys do, and there's some cool footage of that. I'll throw the link down in the description that people can watch that if they'd like to see some of the other works you're working on. It's more than, I think when people think museums, they think a lot of paintings and things like that, but you do the 3D, basically 4D work, all these sculptures and other things and murals, and there's a lot outside of paintings.
There is a hell of a lot outside of paintings. And I'm my official title at the Ringling and what I studied in school was to be an objects conservator. So if it's three-dimensional, chances are it's in my purview to work on.
Gotcha.
I am the conservator of sculpture and decorative arts at the Ringling. Okay. And so objects conservators in different museums have various titles kind of like that. They could be just objects conservator or conservator of decorative arts. But it really is
So what's a decorative art?
A decorative art is like a teapot, anything that is not necessarily functional, but decorative. Okay. So if you think of porcelain Sèvres pieces that are gilded and have enamel work, that's a decorative object. Your candlesticks are decorative objects.
Okay.
Things like that. And that's different from, let's say, a sculpture. So a bronze sculpture that's outside, the David at the Ringling Museum, or anything like that. An outdoor sculpture, indoor sculpture, something that's been sculpted by an artist. That's more to fine art.
Okay.
The boundaries are...
They overlap a little bit.
They can overlap, and there's more than you think.
It's a Venn diagram.
Yes, definitely. Okay. So...
Well, so let's back up here. How long have you been doing this?
I have been doing this since... Well, I went to school in undergrad to be a children's book illustrator.
Really? Okay.
That did not happen.
Well, and I think at that level, too, you have to be an artist, a creative person to even want to get into that field anyway.
Yeah.
So to have that art background is still a good thing, and you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't think you grow up going, I'm going to work in a museum restoring an old teapot.
Some people find conservation early on. I did not.
Okay.
I found museums early on. I've been going to museums my whole life. I grew up across the river from Philadelphia in good old Camden, New Jersey.
Nice.
At that time, it was the murder capital of the United States.
Not nice.
Not nice. So I grew up with the Philadelphia Museum of Art in my backyard.
Wow.
And my mom loved going there, so I went there a lot with her.
The thick walls drowned out the gunshots.
Yes. Yeah, and the crazy Rabid Eagles fans outside.
Oh, yeah. Well, they didn't go anywhere.
No. So, yeah, I went to Moore College of Art and Design to be a children's book illustrator and studied illustration of fine art. And after that, I got a job in Philadelphia at this place called Harry A. Eberhardt and Son. And that was a antique firm, but it's also a restoration firm.
Okay.
And while I was, and I ended up moving into that same building.
Oh, wow.
Which was crazy. It was definitely a crazy atmosphere in a lot of ways. But it was affordable, and I walked down the stairs to work, a little bit too convenient.
Got comfortable.
I got very comfortable there.
Yeah.
And
so basically an antique shop that restored stuff.
That's right. And that was mostly ceramics and glass. So if you had a little ceramic porcelain figure and it fell over on your table and the head broke off, you would bring it into our shop and we would repair it.
And see, I think that's something that's dying out there too, because I think a lot of, you see Home Goods and you see these shops now and things, everything's made in China, and not even, not hundreds of years ago China, just, 2 days ago sweatshop China, and it's made to break and throw away. And I think, so then that means if it's not being made or you're not buying it anymore, or you're not finding it as often in antique shops, then those people who restore it in a shop like that don't exist as much anymore either.
Yeah, it does. And Eberhardt's doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, they closed down, oh gosh, like 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
Another fatality of COVID.
Kind of, but I think it was the owner. I think it was because of my former boss, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and so from there, that's private sector.
That's private sector, but I essentially started working on objects, and for 10 years, I started working there part-time in 1998. And then when I graduated undergraduate art school, I moved into the building and I started working there full-time.
Okay.
And for 10 years, all I did was color match and basically conceal restored porcelains and china and stuff. So it was a lot of color matching.
So you can find a fake pretty quickly.
Yes, I know what to look for. I was like, that has been overpainted, and it could be overpainted very well, but
how often do you see that?
I don't go looking for that anymore. Like, so if
a piece of china comes into Ringling, you're like, pass out to somebody else. You've seen too much of it.
Oh, no, like in that respect, yes. Yes, I can spot those kinds of restorations fairly easily.
Yeah.
Just because I've been looking at it for that. So I was at Eberhardt's for a total of around 14 years before I got into conservation graduate school.
Okay.
So somewhere in those 14 years, I got married, I moved to Delaware, and I realized I have to actually get a career. I can't stay in this business forever. And that's when I essentially found conservation.
Okay.
And started to take steps to be able to go into graduate school.
And where'd you go to graduate school?
I went to graduate school at the University of Delaware at the Winter Museum Program. So the full name is the Winter University of Delaware Program in Art Conservation.
That's fun.
Otherwise known as Woodpack.
Okay. Nice.
So I'm a woodpacker.
They don't put that on T-shirts, probably.
Oh, they should. They really should.
The sports team, Well, I guess there'd probably be a chess club rather than the football team. So with museums, what was your journey from your first job? Did you always continue to keep going to museums? I mean, because I find in music, I love music, it's my job. You're always in that world, but you find other outlets where you were literally lived above your job. You were always in it. Did you still continue to dive headfirst into that by going to museums, getting that art intake, filling your brain full of that knowledge?
I did. Let me think about the best way to answer this. I think I definitely went into conservation wanting to have more possibilities of where to work. I always saw myself staying in the Philly area, and there are plenty of museums in that area. And I've been an intern or studied or worked at most of the big ones. So to get into the program, I had to go back to school and learn chemistry.
Really?
I did.
Yeah, if you're color matching and doing there's so many mediums of art that you have to understand the chemical makeup of all of them.
I have to understand what the art is, and then I have to understand the best materials to put on the art so that it doesn't hurt it and it lasts the test of time. At least 50 years,
right.
30 to 50 years. So that takes knowledge of chemistry, understanding what materials are and the stresses and all of that. And you have to have studio art, which I had in droves because I went to art school. And to a certain extent, art history. I only really had to go back and get chemistry credits to have the qualifications to get into grad school. And then you had to work in a conservation lab with conservators, and it's called your pre-program years. So you're kind of learning about conservation before you apply to school. And so in my pre-program years, I worked at the Mutter Museum, that's in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And if anybody who knows Philadelphia and medical history museums, they know about the Mutter Museum. And if you're ever in Philadelphia, you should totally go.
Right after I get my cheesesteak.
Yes. The Mutter Museum is awesome, and I was still working at Eberhardt's at the time, and I wanted to get my foot in the door somewhere, and I figured it's going to be a stretch to go to the PMA. Let me try the Mutter Museum. It's a smaller museum, and I just love the collection. And it's if you don't know anything about it, it's a medical history museum, and they have things like babies in jars.
Oh, yeah.
Internal organs in jars.
Right.
They have a lot of wax models of diseases that don't really exist anymore. They have the soap lady. They have a wall of skulls.
All the real science nerds.
I think they have slices of Einstein's brain. They have a lot of really cool and interesting things. And so I was able to convince the curator at the time there to let me volunteer one day a week.
Nice.
To work on stuff.
Well, and that's, I think, the fork in the road that people have to make a decision. And that's one of those you felt passionate about that and you lean into that and that helps shape the way you go forward.
Yeah. So I did that kind of work. And so in total, I worked and then I was at the PMA for a little bit pre-program as well in their conservation lab.
Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Yes.
Okay.
Philadelphia Museum of Art. And then after graduate school, I worked at the University of Pennsylvania Museum.
What was the transition like from Mutter to PMA?
From where?
The first one that you volunteered at.
Mutter to PMA?
Mutter,
yeah. I was told by an advisor in the Winneter program that in order to be a contender to get into Winneter, I had to have a major museum on my resume.
Okay. So that's the politics playing the game and you have to go there.
There's definitely politics. I think these days there is more of an effort to make the field more accessible to people who do not have access to that kind of experience before they get into school. There is an acknowledgement that a lot like I had a job, I had a husband, and I had a house. Like I had financial support in order to volunteer my time to get that experience so that a program would take me seriously.
Right.
And to get in.
This is like you want to get the experience, but you have to go through school, but the school doesn't want you unless you have experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was in like 2010, 2012 era. Okay. I got into school in 2012. And since then, I think with COVID and a lot of the equity and inclusion sentiment around the country, there's a lot of that push going on in the conservation field as well to make having a career or being involved in conservation accessible to people who are like, don't have a lot of money or don't live in areas that have major museums and a lot of those opportunities. Like the Midwest, there's very few conservators in the Midwest.
Kids just as smart who want the opportunity, but they don't have the museum to get that internship or the volunteering hours in to get it.
Yeah. So there is a lot of that work going on. After graduate school, I started working at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. That was like a year contract. It was a very specific thing. That's where I was working on the big Chinese murals up on a lift. And
We have some of those. We have a bunch of pictures. As we get near the end, I'll slideshow through all those and talk about those more in detail. But okay, so that was that project.
That was that project. And then I got a Mellon Fellowship at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And that was a 3-year fellowship.
And what does that mean?
That is, it's sort of like the transition to being pre-programmed to going into a graduate program to getting out. A lot of times there are the years after your graduate education where you are still learning, you're still kind of getting your feet wet in the whole museum world and being a conservator. And those are kind of like your kind of fellowship years. So it's very
residency.
It's like a residency. Not that there are, I had several, I was one of a class of 10, a cohort of 10. And I think there were at least 2 or 3 of my classmates that just like slid right. We called them jobs. Oh, you got a job.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just like a limited contract or a fellowship. It was like she was hired as a staff member. Yeah, you were in. And so a couple of us got jobs. A lot of us went and got fellowships or short-term
it's the stepping
contracts.
Stone. Yeah.
They're stepping stones. And so Penn Museum and Philadelphia Museum of Art after grad school were my stepping stones until I was able to be in a position to move out of the area. Unfortunately, because my husband died and I didn't have any ties to Philadelphia anymore, I could move if I wanted.
Right.
Which was a blessing in disguise because at the time my fellowship was ending, work was kind of drying up. There wasn't a place for me to go. I was looking at working privately, which meant I would be a contractor somewhere.
Right, and you could bounce around if you wanted to, doing that privately.
Yes.
Right.
I'd essentially be working out of my home or out of a rented space doing my own thing. And there's
subcontracting basically.
Yeah, and there's like about 30% of conservators working that way. So, not in an institution, not in a museum.
Right. So when you say work was drying up, do you find that in these museums there's a certain docket of basically things that need to be fixed, painted, readjusted, restored, and then once that list is done, it's kind of like, okay, thanks, on to the next?
Yeah, it's very dependent on funding.
Okay.
Staff positions in museums are, unless you've got a lot of wealthy donors who will donate money to endow a position, it's hard to get money for museums and staff positions in museums.
Yeah.
So, like, the Met is probably the only museum one of the few museums in the world that has such a huge conservation department. I think they have like 40 staff conservators.
And that's considered huge.
Yes. Right. My museum has 3 staff positions.
Right. And you have one of them.
And we're on 66 acres of ground, and we have like...
So the work never dries up.
It never dries up, but there's never enough time or people or funding to do all the work that's needed.
Well, and I would think
we prioritize.
It's a lot of hard work to get to that position too. So because you can't just have anybody doing it. And that's why I wanted to talk about, the schooling and what it took for you to come up through that, because that is hard work. And while, yes, more young people should have the opportunity to get into it, they also they shouldn't lower any standards as far as people getting into it and actually getting that job.
Yeah. It's a very niche thing. Yeah. It's very tenacious. You've got to be able to do science and art, and you have to have hand skills. You have to have... Most of what I do is problem solving.
Right.
I problem solve most of the time. We can get into... And there's definitely a difference in the kind of work I was doing as a fellow than the work that I'm doing now as a staff conservator.
Right.
It's
So what was that work? Because if you are within that fellowship, it is like a residency. And I have a friend who just, graduated medical school not that long ago, went through his residency, figured out what he wanted to do, and now he's an ER doctor, and he loves it because he loves the high pace, and he found he found his lane,
Yeah.
And so I'm sure with a fellowship, is it kind of the same thing where you're like, go in this department of that, go and try this, what do you like within that, and then you find your niche that you get your job later.
So we pick our lane in graduate school. We decide there's many different specialties and subspecialties within the field. So like paintings is a popular one that I think most people would identify with. Art paintings.
Yeah.
But there's also three-dimensional objects, which is what I chose to study. You can choose to study paper conservation, where you're talking about documents and letters.
That's got to be rough.
Yeah. I mean, and when I was
we all have that receipt from Walgreens that just like fade from 5 years ago that you look at and you go, well, I can't even tell what was on that, let alone objects from, the Declaration of Independence and what goes into conserving that or any of these documents.
Yeah, documents, prints, drawings, photographs, like textiles, costumes and textiles.
Right.
What else is there? Books and archives. So conserving books and rebinding books. Subspecialties these days, especially in art collections, because there's time-based media now and like whole room installations. There's time-based media artists. And so they're more familiar with electronics and
my N64.
things that move
Yeah.
and like audiovisual equipment and things like that.
Well, you have your Jurassic Park shirt on. Look at what will eventually be, Christopher Nolan with Interstellar and, the gigantic IMAX footage and reels that they have of these. That's going to need, conserving and holding onto those type of things, those mediums.
Yeah, and that's like not even that's a whole other thing. And there is a push, I think, out there in Hollywood to really conserve a lot of that old film, because a lot of that old film is on cellulose nitrate.
Disintegrates, yeah.
It catches fire spontaneously.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah. At film cells for Disney, like that's a whole other, and that's like much more niche. Like a lot fewer people are involved in doing that kind of work.
Right.
So there's a variety of things you can work on. What was the original question?
That's okay. Well, that's fine. It leads into
so the fellowship. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, in graduate school, I picked my lane and I said, all right, three-dimensional objects.
Okay.
Which could be wood, it could be ceramic, it could be glass, it could be painted surfaces, it could be a lot of different materials. Stone, whatever. And so
you made your life harder on yourself on purpose.
I know I did. Tried to give myself
options,
a good chance to work.
Yeah.
In that pigeonhole.
That's true.
So when I started working after graduate school and I was in these fellowships and the contract with the Penn Museum, I was working on very specific things. The institutions, when I went to Penn, it was for a very specific project.
Okay.
It was to stabilize and deinstall 2 works of art. And I was working with another conservator. We were paired up as a team because these were monumental works of art. It was a tomb chapel wall from ancient Egypt that we had to stabilize and deinstall. And we worked with riggers. It wasn't just us, but my partner and I were doing all the research and doing the testing and figuring out how to do it. And then 2 large mud plaster murals from China from like the 1500s.
Wow.
We were going to stabilize those surfaces to deinstall.
Now, when you say stabilize, what do you mean stabilize? As far as like putting wood around them to move them, or
that could be part of it,
so it doesn't get scratched or anything like that.
So for the mud plaster murals, if you think about mud, kind of compacted initially, so you've got this. It's almost like it's not necessarily like a fresco. You think of like fresco because fresco really like hardens. It's like plaster.
Okay.
But this is a much softer material. in the beginning, when the painting was made, it was much harder. But the artist painted directly onto compacted mud.
That's fun.
And so over time,
1,500 years ago. I mean, okay, makes sense.
and then
From the 1500s, rather.
yeah, and I forget who was the guy but like University of Pennsylvania acquired the mural, and they basically went into China, and they cut the mural apart, took it off of the wall, and it was in these. They assembled it together in these panels on this wooden scaffolding in the museum.
Right.
So there were 2 of these murals, and I'm trying to remember how big they were. I think they were like 20 foot by 25 feet each.
Wow. Just the fact that they could cut it off the wall and ship it back to America like that.
In sections.
Yeah.
And so the surfaces of these objects were very dry and brittle, and some of them were starting to kind of delaminate and crack off. And that's what we're saying, stabilize.
Okay.
Because the ultimate goal was to disassemble both of those works and put them in storage. Because immediately adjacent to the museum building at the time, the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania was demolishing a building, and then they were digging into bedrock to build another building.
That's fun.
So they did vibration studies,
right?
And the museum determined
they had to get rid of those.
We
pieces
needed to take these down,
just for the time being.
And that's why I was brought on.
Did you get to reassemble them later?
No.
That's somebody else's problem.
Yes, the current team's problem.
Yeah.
Is they're working on them now, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm still in contact with colleagues there.
Well, and see, that's what people don't think about. It's like you're in a museum building, and I know Ringling's right near the airport, so I'm sure you're getting buzzed by airplanes all the time.
Yeah.
But, a building next door that has nothing to do with the museum, the vibrations in the bedrock could damage this priceless work of art. And then it's your job to figure out, be a problem solver.
Yes.
And fix it.
And that's what I did there. So I became very intimately aware, at that time. That was, oh my God, how long ago was that? 2017?
Okay.
2015?
Yeah.
15, 16. So 10 years ago. And I've forgotten all about all the things that I learned. But at the time, I was just I knew about mud plaster and how to conserve that and how to stabilize it and take it down. And it was a great learning project for me. It was a big project.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking about Egypt, I'm sure you just saw their gigantic new museum they just opened in Cairo. That unbelievable. And it took 27 years, I think, to build. I mean, of course, Egypt's got its own problems as it is, but the fact that they have all those artifacts and, in the good condition that they are in, and I'm sure a lot of conservators over there taking care of those pieces, thousands of years old. Yeah. And I loved one of the things when the museum was finally getting ready to open, they were explaining how they had, I think it was the statue of Ramses II, and where it was originally in Egypt, on his birthday, the sun would shine through at a certain time through a hole in the wall and shine on his face at a certain time on his birthday. Like originally, the Egyptians figured it out and did it however, aliens, whatever. Dean's not here to say that, so I'll say that for him. Aliens. And so the museum recreated it. Where in whatever room they put that statue of, I believe it's Ramses, don't quote me on that, I'm pretty sure. They have a hole in the wall that on his birthday, which is I think the day they opened the museum, the sun shines through at the right time and shines on his face.
Wow.
And it's like, that's incredible.
That is incredible.
And that's forethought by the museum to care enough to notice that in the first place and then recreate it in their new space.
And I think that's part of a conservator's job. Maybe not that particular piece of it, but to really understand the original context of an object and how people would have experienced it at the time of its making. And it's, and for that particular piece, like the position and the importance of having the sunshine on his face on a specific day.
Right.
That's all part of the original context. And bringing that over into a museum interpretation is so important.
Yes.
And that's a good part of what I do with research that conservators can do for important objects like that, because we have to prioritize. We can't do that with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And some objects we're never going to know the whole history of. But for certain things, you want to understand where it was made, why was it made, and what does our object look like now? What's safe to do to it to bring it closer to the artist's original intent?
Well, and that was going to be one of my questions too, because when you say you're a conservator, what's two-part question, I guess.
Yeah.
To you, what is the difference between being a conservator and being a restorationist?
A conservator takes in the big picture, including restoring. So in Europe, they actually call conservators restorers, because there's an acknowledgement that restoration is
Involved.
It's involved, yeah, definitely. In some cases, when I'm treating an object, restoration isn't necessarily part of my treatment. And we say treatment because it's kind of along the same line as doctors treating patients.
Yeah. You're extending the life of an object rather than have it deteriorate.
Right.
And that's what I think about, because it's like, at what point is a painting, let's just say, to pick one object, a painting, at what point, if you're, or a restorationist, let's say, just full on restorationist, is putting newer paint now on that painting, when does it, what's the threshold of now this is practically a new painting, because you've gone so far in terms of restoring it than if you're just conserving it as what it is and keeping it from deteriorating.
Yeah.
But keeping the fine line of everything on it is still 100% original. And I would think that's hard to find that line.
It's very hard, and it can be controversial. There's definitely...
All right, we found the controversy for the podcast. All right, put it down in the comments. What do you think? Should they be touching them or not?
I think, I think it was I don't know my conservation history that well, but conservation itself has its own history and its own history of how people interpreted what conservation is and how far to go with restoration.
Yeah.
It's changed over time. I think these days we're a lot less likely to be very interventive, as they say, like overly restoring something. Right. So I'll have two examples. And so the first thing I can think of in terms of cleaning controversies is the controversy around cleaning the Sistine Chapel. I think that's sort of well known if you know about museums and you know about the history of the Sistine Chapel.
For those of you in Wachula, want to explain that a little bit, the quick version of that.
So the Sistine Chapel, was painted by Michelangelo.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel.
Our history.
See? I know.
I graduated
I'm not just a guitar
undergrad with
player.
art
I know
history
some
in
things.
2000, okay?
I
It's
watched
26
National
years
Treasure.
ago. So you got the Sistine Chapel, and you've got the painting up there, and you've got
the scaffolding.
all of these candles burning over time, and the soot is accumulating.
True.
And accumulating.
I'm sure it's not good ventilation either.
No. And so over time, that soot obscures the original paint that the artist put down. And
Which is what, oil-based paint, or what kind of paint would be used?
I don't
for that?
know what paint was on the Sistine Chapel. It could be oil. It could be. There's a couple of different. It's not acrylic. I know it's not acrylic. I think it's oil. Let's just say it's oil.
Okay. One would assume. Well, keep going. I'll Google it.
Yes, please. Thank
Somebody
you.
will tell me.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
I'm embarrassed now.
You're fine.
I'm an objects person. I'm not
That's
a
true. You're not a paint person. You're an objects person. You chose your lane.
I did. That's not my lane. So over time, you're a visitor, let's say the early 1900s, and you're looking up and you're like, you know what? I can't really see
Can't make it out
anymore. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to clean it. They wanted to clean it off so that the original bright color, you're like, no, it's the patina. It's supposed to look that way. It's supposed to look dirty. That's the age of time. And I don't know the nuances of this discussion. All I know is that it was a controversy at the time.
Right.
Cleaning the Sistine Chapel, because they thought that the cleaning...
And did they do it?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah. But they thought that the cleaning would destroy the paint underneath.
Well, see, this is kind of your lane because we mentioned it earlier. Now I know what you're talking about here. The paintings on the, and thank you, ChatGPT, the paintings on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel created by Michelangelo between 1508 and 1512. Ooh, yeah, we got that part. Were done using a technique called fresco.
That's okay. So that's a fresco.
Yeah, specifically.
Circle back to that.
Beyond fresco. Okay. True fresco, Italian. So instead of painting on dry walls like modern paint, Michelangelo applied wet plaster, a mixture of lime and sand, to the ceiling.
That's right.
And painted directly onto that wet surface using water-based pigments. So it's a watercolor.
It's a watercolor embedded in plaster.
Yeah.
And that can be very tricky to clean. So, but
the natural mineral pigments of the paint were ground up earth, stones, and oxides. So that is soot. To an extent, I would imagine.
Yes, you have to be very careful about how you remove the dirty stuff on top of that.
Right, because you're going to take some paint with it.
Yes, there's always that possibility.
Very interesting.
So each piece is different. Each painting is different because every painting has lived its own life in its own environment.
Right.
And has had different things to it. So each painting's conservator approaches a painting very carefully to understand what it is. And that's where the science comes in.
And that's when you have to have a steady hand. It doesn't go off.
Science and the testing.
Yeah.
So in terms of restoration, though, if we're looking at a painting and it has losses in it, let's say there's like a loss down, the side of a portrait or something. Yeah. And the original intent was to be able to enjoy the portrait of the person, and the artist's intent was to have you visualize that portrait,
right?
Then it would make sense to restore that loss, meaning add a fill material and then in-paint it, which we don't paint over original surface. We just paint the part that we've filled, and mimic the surrounding area and basically kind of recreate what may have been there.
So there is a slight gap then. So for painting, so you fill it behind it like with a...
So the paint is on, let's say it's a canvas painting.
Okay.
So you've got the canvas that's been sized so that it's impervious. And then you've got the surface is prepared with probably gesso, maybe something else underneath, and then you apply the oil paint. Let's say it's an oil painting.
Okay. Yeah.
All of those layers have a thickness. And so if the paint flakes off, that's a loss, and there's a little bit of a depression there.
Right.
So in order to restore that, you need to bring that up to surface level. And then you can apply your paint over it.
I gotcha.
So when you look at it and look at it from the side and different angles,
you
don't see the dent.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So let's take an example of an archaeological object.
Okay. More your field.
A limestone sculpture.
Right.
And or even like an archaeological ceramic let's say has been broken into 10 pieces, and let's say a third of the object doesn't even exist anymore. So when they excavated it, it was broken, but they only were able to recover
like 2/3 of
like
it.
2/3 of the object, right? So what tends to happen, and each institution chooses to handle this a little differently, but in general, we don't do things like overly restoring an archaeological artifact. That can depend. Attic vessels, which are that black and red ware, the Greek vessels.
Yeah.
Those can be restored more to sort of like a as they were made finish. But not too often. A lot of times they'll restore the form, but maybe just color the fill a flat color.
Okay.
So that you see like the form of the vase, but they're not trying to recreate the imagery on it.
Right. So they fix it, but it's not what it was originally.
Right. They don't invent the scene.
Right.
If the scene is partially missing because you don't have that ceramic there, they're not going to just reinvent the scene based on like nothing.
Well, and that's the thing with certain, when you talk about those archaeological pieces that have, like if it's Greek or something like that have those scenes on them, yeah, that's when you have to You're not just making something up.
Yeah. So I've worked on a fair number of archaeological things in the last few years, and I found that our approach to archaeological is stabilize it. Like, we don't want it to fall apart anymore.
So if it's a 2/3 bowl with a big chunk missing out of it, you're restoring the bowl to the best of what you have there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're not necessarily going to restore the missing pieces. Mm-hmm. And in fact, a lot of times we didn't, because that was the scholar and the curator's decision.
Right.
Too.
It's what you have of the object.
Mm-hmm. So what we were trying to do is really give it a more authentic representation of what that object is, but we're never going to take it back to like 2500 BCE or something. Like, that would just look weird.
Well,
it would look, and it would be bad. It would be I think it would be a bad move.
It's not what it's meant to showcase, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think what people should understand is that you have put together, and the story I remember from what you told me, that was it a teapot or something, like from the hundreds of pieces that were there, and that's what takes so much time and effort and detail, and you have all the pieces, it's just putting them back together.
Yeah, and that project, which I did not send you a picture of, and maybe
that's okay.
I can do that, but that was I will sometimes take on private work. Mm-hmm. I don't do it that often because I like my free time to do other things.
Yes.
But I can't resist a broken piece of pottery.
So that was not for a museum. That was just for me. Mm-hmm. And somebody in Sarasota approached me and said, "Hey, I had an accident at home. Could you come take a look?" How long did that take?
Well, there were nine objects total that I worked on for this one client.
Wow.
And I worked on them.
That
and
cat is not allowed in the kitchen anymore.
And they ranged. Actually, it was a shelf that broke. And they all fell down on a terrazzo floor.
You can just picture it in like slow motion where it hits and just shatters.
It was bad and very unfortunate.
That is unfortunate.
She was a very lovely woman, and I'm very glad that I got to work with her on those things. But so the most broken piece, I think, had 90 plus pieces.
Wow. And
I says, you're sure you want me to put this together? And she's like, yes. I'm like, okay. I mean, it was fun. It was nerve-wracking, but it was fun.
I'm sure you got paid well.
That took me, actually, to fix all of those 9 teapots in various stages, took me 100 hours. And I had to work on it nights and weekends, so it took me about a year.
Wow. But hey, they got them.
I did, yes.
Very nice. Well, for museum, for pieces that are hundreds of years old, what's one more year?
What's one more year?
So when did you first start at Ringling?
I started right before COVID. So I started in December of 2019.
Okay. And so how was, obviously with COVID and with no people, or very little people, what were the projects, some of the big projects you got to work on during that time?
I walked into the job walking right into the reinstallation of the Historic Circus Museum.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is where, if anybody's familiar with the Ringling, it's where the train car is. We now have John Ringling's Rolls Royce. Oh, and I think I should just say, I'm not here as a spokesperson for the Ringling. I'm just here talking
about art.
As a conservator and my experiences and what I work on.
Yeah, you just happened at the moment you worked there.
So I walked into that project and they were moving wagons around and they were installing wagon wheels on the wall and, new cases. And I was just kind of thrown into there. Yeah. And with no preparation, things were just in motion. And I was just like, okay, let's go. And then COVID shut everything down. And then a lot of the museum projects stopped and halted and had to pivot. And so there was a lot of disruption. Funding. And this was not a unique experience. Every single company, every single museum across the country went through things like this.
Oh, yeah.
So COVID caused a lot of disruption to my getting familiar with my new job, because that was my first job after graduate school. And then the second biggest project that I started working on that started to pick up again once kind of, things settled down with, after COVID, was the Cypriot reinstallation project, which is on view right now.
Which is what?
Very proud of it. This is a permanent installation that is in Gallery 12 of the Museum of Art, and it involves 201 ancient objects that are in the collection.
That's cool.
That range in date from 2500 BCE to the Roman era.
Wow.
And there are large limestone sculptures, ceramics, glass, and metal artifacts from the island of Cyprus that John Ringling purchased in the late 1920s.
Wow.
And I did some of the treatments myself. I unfortunately picked the hardest ones. I don't know why.
You love a good challenge.
I do. I love a challenge.
Yeah.
But I also directed 4 other conservators to help us out preparing everything for display. And then a big part of what I did, which is what nobody sees and nobody really understands, is I was talking with the collections department, which are the registrars and preparators, people who prepare for exhibitions, who design exhibitions, who talk to contractors to build casework. I did research on what materials are safe to use for a long-term display, which is, it can't be wood off gases and can really corrode things. And it's volatiles are not good around artwork long term.
Yeah. Wow.
That mount makers, nearly every object needed a mount. And so
Which all have to be custom.
All custom.
Per piece.
Bespoke. And I had to talk to our mount makers to talk about how they can work with the object safely and how they can be supported safely. Like what is the object
it's one
need?
thing for you to fix it and make it the way it's supposed to be to put on display, and then the next step is how do you put it on display?
Yeah.
It's
a whole other thing. So there's a lot that goes into even temporary exhibitions.
How big is a team for that type of thing?
Let's see. It was me. It was my 4 colleagues, 2 mount makers, at least 2 registrars. There was the curator, the scholar, and we had contracted out the casework, to a casework fabricator. We had to hire art handlers to help us install and move things around. I'd say at least a team of 15.
Yeah.
15 to 20 if you really want to go out and include
around 20.
all of the contractors that were
that are involved
fabricating things.
And that's the thing. I remember I love museums. I've mentioned on the podcast before I was homeschooled, and so going to museums is part of learning. So, and I think Florida is very lucky with the amount of museums that Florida has and the amount of stuff you can see. And I remember just in Ringling in general, the amount of stuff there's unbelievable. The Oslo Theater and that construction, you don't picture that when you're walking in the building. That's breathtaking. You have the mansion itself, the Cadizan there. I played a wedding there years and years ago, and that's an amazing spot. The Rose Garden and all the sculptures in that area throughout the whole museum, and then the museum itself with all the different art installations. And I think Sarasota is very lucky to have something like that, and the circus side of it with all the miniature rooms and all. I'm sure all the conservation that goes into all of that has to be incredible too.
There aren't enough of us to do all the things that are needed. That's the truth. And that's the same. That's true for every place. I'm sure the Met feels like we don't have enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you say the Met in New York City and there's 40 of them, that does not seem like enough.
At least because the Met's enormous.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have, I don't know how many objects they have in their collection.
Again, talking about Cairo, I'd love to know how many people it took to do that.
Yeah, I was not following the construction of that at all. I'd love to go see it.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, too dangerous right now. Yeah, not right now.
I wonder when there will be a
Pictures
good
will
time.
work just fine.
Yeah.
But so with all that hard work you do, what do you like to do in your downtime? You like to read. I heard you like to knit during Mets games.
No, Jets games.
Oh, Jets games. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Same difference.
I'll knit during an Eagles game too.
Okay.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yes, I like to knit.
There you go.
I always my hands need to be busy.
You got to be doing something.
I don't know why.
Creative.
I'm destroying my thumbprints. I'm destroying my fingerprints because I can't stop doing stuff with my hands.
Yeah.
I like to knit. I like to do crafts. I like to sew. I used to make little watercolors. I used to do my own art. I think now my art has like shifted, to like different kinds of things. I like to listen to murder podcasts.
Fun. There you go. What woman doesn't? Right? So I keep hearing. I think it's a statistic now.
And actually, if we, even if you want to take like true crime and talk about art crime, it's kind of fascinating to me.
Didn't something else just happen not that long ago? It was in France or something?
It was the Louvre.
Yeah,
they broke into the Louvre and stole some jewels.
Yeah. It's like, what? What year is this? What movie were they filming? It's all real.
The Thomas Crown affair again?
It's insane.
I love the idea of because it could be monetary in value, but then there's some art thefts that are they just stole it because they wanted it.
Right.
And they had it in their house. And it's like a very personal thing.
Yeah.
They weren't stealing it to sell it. They were stealing it so that they could create their own special little gallery.
It. Yeah.
So, when you look at the Boston, the Gardner Museum heist?
Yeah.
Is that's also fascinating to me. And so much of that art is never found. That's the other thing, because if you're going to put police on the job, you're going to do it to solve crimes that are related to people, not necessarily artwork.
Right. The insurance covers it for a museum, and the insurance doesn't care that it's a priceless artifact of actual historic, relevance.
It's like, but I want it, but the
thing, I don't want the money, I want the thing back.
The thing that stabs me in the heart, though, about a museum person and a conservator is the fact that they cut the paintings out of the frames. It's just, and the pictures of the galleries after, and you just see these frames all over the floor, just higgledy-piggledy with the pictures cut out of them. It just oh my God, this breaks my heart.
I know. Or what is it you hear some stories about that they would paint over the original so that they could, hide it for years and years. It's that they know that the painting is behind there. It's just crazy. Yeah, that might have been a movie, but I feel like they would do that.
I could see somebody doing that.
Yeah.
I could see that actually happening. What else do I like to do? I don't know. I end up cleaning my house a lot because I'm not at home, and then Florida's just dusty and dirty, man. We were talking about my car earlier.
Oh yeah.
I clean my car.
Yeah.
But I hang out with Dean and we go bowling and I like stuff like that. And I hang out with my friends downtown. So.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of these pictures here from work. So I love this. So yeah, I mean, you got your goggles there on.
Those are my goggles. So I can see better.
Yeah, magnification, I would assume, is very important when you're talking about such. The amount of attention to detail has to be insane.
Yes, you have to have the big picture, and you also have to see all the details.
Right. So what is because I know it's in the next picture. What is this first of all?
I'm working on a tortoiseshell fan, and this is when I was still working at Everhart's, and I was trying to demonstrate my acumen to get into conservation. And this was a project that came into the lab that we don't normally work on. We didn't normally work on because it wasn't ceramic. It was completely different material. And I was like, I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to give it a conservation treatment. So, at the same time I'm trying to get into school, I'm still working full time in this workshop. And I'm like, all right, how can I serve my future purposes?
I know tortoiseshell is banned now, but in the beginning they used it to make guitar picks because it's a very durable substance. And so what was it like working with that? And was it easy to clean, work with, malleable, or?
It was, dense? It was different. I had to replace the ribbon that held all of the little spokes together. Okay. I forget what you call those, the little ribs. There it is.
And that's what it turns into, which is just incredible.
And it was each of the little, I don't know what you would call them.
the fan blades.
Each of the little blades, that's
Yeah.
right, were carved so that there were little scenes in them, and they were actually very delicate. And so what I was also doing at the same time was there was a little section that was like broken out of it, and I wanted to replace and restore some of that fine detail. And I ended up using thread coated in epoxy, and I just
Really?
glued it in place, and it
held.
and it
That's cool.
mimicked the tortoiseshell.
Wow.
So
Oh yeah, it looks great. And to think, I mean, looking at the first picture, it's all in pieces here, and just to line it all up.
Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
connected at the very bottom,
Yeah.
but that ribbon that's holding it together at the top is separated.
Very cool. And so this was what you were talking about earlier. This is one of them. I know they're kind of sporadically in this. Here,
this is one of those mud plaster murals from China.
Yeah, and I mean with that scissor lift, you can kind of see how huge that thing is.
Yes.
So I thought you were putting it up. You're taking it down.
You're taking it down, and
Yeah.
I think there's a couple other images that I have in here of that.
And I love this guy, little camel guy.
This is a project that I was working on at the Philadelphia Museum of Art when I was a fellow. This is a Tang Dynasty camel. So this is from China. And I named him Joe. And I worked on him for a while.
Wow.
I don't know how many hours.
What did you have to do with him?
So we were reinstalling the Asian galleries, part of the Asian galleries, and they were going to put him back on display. And so we
Okay.
had a lot of old restoration
Interesting.
on him and overpaint. So I basically cleaned a lot of that old stuff off, which was obscuring a lot of the breaks in the legs. And at this stage, this is a picture where after I have added new fill material that is bright
Okay.
to those breaks, I did
Yeah.
not take him completely apart. It would have been too dangerous to do that, in my
Right.
opinion.
Something else would break.
Yeah, you're putting the object at more risk.
So those are lines. So that's where it broke before
Yes.
and had been put back together.
And so it's essentially refinishing
Okay.
that lost surface so that I could go in and tone and in paint
Wow.
and in paint all of them away.
Yeah. So this is cool.
Do you know what that is? Do you know that artist?
No.
No, it's hard to see. There's a lot going on in the background. It's very delicate.
Right, but you can see all the little. And so what is that? What is that made out of?
That is an Alexander Calder mobile.
I don't know that name, but I don't.
Oh, you don't know
No.
Alexander Calder?
No, maybe if I see more of the work.
Okay.
But it's
Usually in a lot of museums,
Yeah.
he was
Hanging.
working in like the 60s, 70s,
Okay.
80s. And this is iron. So they're basically these aluminum blades that have been painted black, and they're all connected into a
Okay.
mobile.
Yeah.
And the wires, the support wires, they're iron.
Okay.
And
It's like a tornado
Yeah.
alarm.
and this is basically a modern object. So it's modern and contemporary object
Right.
that I was working on for loan. And at the moment, it's at Selby Gardens, just down the road.
Then I probably have seen it because I love going to Selby Gardens.
You do?
And they had a George Harrison
Yeah.
art installation,
Yeah.
which was very cool. Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
if you haven't been to see the Calder intervention,
All right.
it's up
I'll
there.
go check that out.
I think it's there through October at
Yeah.
least.
So here's science. You got the lab coat and the gloves and the
This
science
is
glasses.
science.
So
Yes, this is when I was a pre-program intern at the Philadelphia Museum. And I'm basically laser cleaning a bronze sculpture.
oh, that's fun.
So I'm using a laser to...
So that's when you get the people coming in going, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Do it safely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can really see it, but behind the sculpture, there's a large wall that we made out of cardboard.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wearing special glasses to protect my eyes
There's
from the
cardboard.
laser.
Yeah, cardboard protects you from lasers.
And basically what I would do is I would wet the surface. So we're trying to remove corrosion off of the surface. And I'm using a laser to heat up that corrosion and basically blast it off of the surface.
So, and that's where I guess what we talked about before, that's when it gets into, should you do that or should you leave it alone?
Yeah.
So that then falls on the curator and the director to
Yeah.
say, no, do it.
Yeah. And what was going on? In part, it's to preserve the surface. And basically, this is a sculpture from the Rodin Museum in Philadelphia that had been outside in the environment for a long time. And the corrosion that you can see kind of dripping down, you can see like these like drips. And that's all from like rainwater and different things. And it was basically obscuring the form.
Gotcha.
There's a whole other kind of backstory to this sculpture. This was cast by the foundry that Rodin was working in the late 1800s, excuse me. And this was a casting from the 1920s.
Wow.
But by the same foundry that Rodin used to cast sculptures in his lifetime. So it's an early posthumous cast, but it's not a cast that was done during Rodin's lifetime. But it was still corroded and in such a way where you couldn't really enjoy the sculpture for the sculpture.
Right.
So that's why certain decisions were made.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're not against doing those things.
No, I think it has to do... I think that's where the conserving comes in. It's us...
Because you're keeping it from deteriorating more, like I said before.
Yeah, it's us finding all the information and then figuring out what the best route is.
Right. Problem solving.
Yeah, problem solving.
Very nice. So here's Joe.
There's Joe. That's when he was done. And he's
Nice.
there for his after treatment glamour shot.
That's fun.
I tried to give you some fun pictures because, you know, I think conservators can be serious and like technical, and I try to be fun.
Yeah.
I try to have fun in my
work.
Like
you talk about academia, it's like all the high-nosed people, you know, it's like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. It's a museum of fine art, you know, but you got to have fun in your job, too. And there's a reason why you like your job.
I like that part of it, too.
Yeah.
I can be hoity-toity, too.
When you have to be.
When I have to be.
Very nice. And then, so this is the old shop.
This is Everhart's. This is my last day.
Aw.
I don't actually have many pictures of Everhart's, but I have this one.
That's a great one.
And I
you
think
can just
maybe
see
the next one.
The antique
it was.
look.
Everhart's lived on 20th and Walnut Street in Philadelphia, and which is right down from Rittenhouse Square. When I lived there, I lived on the 3rd floor in a studio apartment, and I paid $300 a month.
Wow.
You believe that in cash?
Yeah. Do you know what's there now?
The building is still empty.
Really? See, that's a shame.
Somebody has bought it, and
That's a shame.
they're just sitting on it.
Just sitting there.
It's just sitting there.
Yeah. So now this is again more detail. So it's an engine company thing.
I've got my goggles on again.
You got your goggles.
This is when I was at Winterthur Museum as a pre-program person, and I was working in the textile lab. And this is a fire banner, and this was basically a banner that a fire company would have. And I think this is from the 19th century, so late 1800s.
See, and I follow pages on Instagram that restore like old film posters, you know, so they put them in that solvent that kind of flattens them out, gets ready, and then they basically repaint wherever the lines are cut through. So you can see that in this picture here.
Yeah, that's basically, I believe it was what you're doing, right? Painted silk.
Yeah.
And the paint was flaking. So what I'm going in is I'm putting in very thin adhesive that kind of gets wicked under. The paint kind of sucks it under. And when it gets tacky enough, I can just kind of sit it down and it'll stick.
Huh.
It'll stick to the silk.
Oh, so you're the paint that is like peeling off, you're basically putting it back down.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not repainting it.
No.
You're just reapplying what has been cracked.
Yes. So this is like the conserving part.
Right. You're not adding. You're just
it's
fixing
unstable.
What's there.
It's starting to flake. It's starting to lift off. It could be lost. So we want to set that back down with some adhesive.
And that's the stabilizing.
That's the stabilizing part.
Very
and
cool.
then if the decision is made to go in and put some paint in to those losses, all those little cracks you see,
right,
that I think would be considered the restoring part.
There you go, folks. Makes sense. I like it. And so this is more taking off of that mud.
Yeah, we're going back to the mud plaster murals, and this is the disassembly. And I worked, so who you see there are these two amazing people that I worked with for this project. The one standing behind the scaffold, not the one in the blue bucket, is Harry, and he is an artist in his own right. I think he works in stone, and he just became a rigger that worked with art museums to like rig artwork when they needed it.
That's cool.
And Matt and my partner on this project and I had to work with him to figure out how to disassemble this thing. And it was really a team effort. And
At least it was already
problem
cut into
solving.
pieces.
Yeah, sort of.
Because that first guy, he had a really hard job.
Yeah,
cutting it up.
yeah.
So this is cool because you see a lot of these in museums in general.
Yeah,
but
this is a carousel horse. This is during when I was in school. This was my first summer work project. So we have, our lessons during the year. Mm-hmm. My program was 3 years. So the first year we learned all about the different specialties in blocks of time. Second year we specialized. This was in between my first year and second year in the summer. So we don't have summer vacation. We go out there and we do an internship somewhere.
Right, yeah.
And I went up to Shelburne Museum in Vermont, and they had this program where they had figured it out. Like one person could work on a carousel horse for 8 weeks. And it was the perfect amount of time for me. That was the amount of time I had to work in the summer at a place. And this is me essentially removing, what was it? Like, over time, in order to sort of clean and polish these horses, linseed oil was placed. It was basically like linseed oil in a wax. It's kind of like waxing your car. It's kind of protection. It kind of spruces it up a little bit, saturates the surface. Well, you do that over time, it builds up and it starts to get dirty and nasty and obscure the surface. So I was taking off all of those layers of
to get back
applied
to the
oil over the year to get back down to the original surface.
Wow.
And that's what I was doing. So you can see and each horse had a name. This horse was named Kitty because the donor who gave money to fund this particular cleaning decided that's what she wanted it to be called.
There you go.
And so you can see part of it's clean. The head is not clean.
Okay. So that's like the dirty oil residue that's still there compared to what's clean. Wow.
It's wild seeing me in all these clothes that I don't own anymore. I'm like, I remember that cardigan.
Right. And so this is the basically wide shot of those scissorless lips working with that mud.
So I worked
mural.
So on the left, the blue lift is where the riggers are working, and in the orange lift, that's where myself and my partner are working. Okay. So I worked in that gallery on these lifts for a good 3 months.
Wow.
So I'm not afraid of heights that much.
Don't look
I could not have been afraid of heights for this.
Wow. And you got your big goggles there. The microscope.
The microscope. This is at the Ringling. This is a piece that's in the Cypriot display in Gallery 12, and this is a yellow glass dish that had 2 fragments off of it. And I'm basically examining it, and I ended up cleaning the surface overall and cleaning the break. There was old adhesive from having those fragments put on previously.
Okay.
They had fallen off. So
the 50-year rule like you were talking about.
Yeah. This was probably shellac. Like in the past, they used a lot of like protein glues, and shellac was one of them. Protein glues is like hide glue and things like that.
Okay.
Rabbit skin glue. And shellac is a tree sap. So we use different things these days. Now? I tend to use a magical substance called B72, which is an acrylic copolymer that has been demonstrated to have a lifespan of about 100 years.
Wow.
We don't want anything to cross-link, which means it hardens over time, and we can't use solvents to reverse it, to basically dissolve it.
Yeah. So
I like using B72. You can reverse it pretty easily. I will also use epoxy if I need to, but I like epoxy a lot less because it doesn't readily dissolve. You really solvents just swell it to make it softer for you to take off. So it's not as forgiving.
Huh.
But
so those 2 pieces that are laying there, you had to reattach those.
I had to reattach those
using your fancy compound.
Yeah. We have a lot of bespoke materials.
Yeah.
This is a picture of me in grad school.
Nice.
And I think this was during a workshop. I just threw
Yeah.
this in as
There you go.
me and my, this is Claire. She's my conservation buddy for a
Yeah.
while. We would go to conferences, and she
Cool.
was my fellow objects major, and we palled around a lot.
That's fun. And then, oh yeah, with Joe the Camel.
Joe the Camel in the back, and my goggles.
And now I assume this was the original shop.
Yeah, this is the showroom, the front showroom of the original shop.
That's fun. That's amazing.
My former boss loved Japanese cloisonne, so I kind of grew up in that environment as a restorer. There was a lot of cloisonne, which is essentially enamel work on copper.
Wow.
And I mean, gorgeous things.
Yeah.
Truly gorgeous things. I came away with a couple of pieces.
Yeah.
When I was leaving, they gave me a nice heavy discount, and they're like, pick a couple of things and
Very
we'll,
nice.
you know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What is the hardest substance to work on that you found?
I mean, for me, it's got to be inorganic materials because I have less experience. I think a lot of objects conservators might say, I don't want to work on glass or ceramics because they're so challenging.
Yeah.
Because they're hard. It's hard to restore glass and have it disappear. You know, you can't really make it look good. So for me, anything that's really big,
It just takes time.
it just takes time. Big things are really daunting.
Because it's big picture, but I mean, with your, microscopes you're using and your magnifiers, you're taking a big object that might have a lot of work to do, and you got to really hone in. So you have to prepare for the long haul. Yeah.
Yeah, big, heavy things, I think. So currently Ringling has a lot of outdoor sculpture that are very big. And I'm not going to lie, it's daunting to me. It's overwhelming.
Well,
there are a lot, and they need work.
And when the hurricane came through, was it Ian? You had all the sculptures that got kind of pushed around there, or was it Milton and Helene?
Milton and Helene.
Okay.
Milton and Helene did a lot less damage to collections than I thought. It really impacted Cottazon, the mansion. Yeah. The basement was flooded, and it shorted out all of our systems in the house. And so we've been recovering from that.
Yeah.
And that was, and yeah, that's another hard job that I have to do that I didn't have before I moved down here, was to prepare for and recover from hurricanes.
Yeah.
So as a conservator and as part of the collections team, we do a lot to prepare spaces for hurricane impacts and water coming in and all of that.
The flooding, I would assume, is the worst. What's
the fear of flooding? Yes.
Yeah.
So there's definitely storm surge. The Cottazon Mansion is definitely, always the priority whenever we have to prepare for something. Mm-hmm. And we have various things that we can do to prepare based on the severity of the storm. Well, there's certain levels to what we do. I have visions and nightmares of the bay just washing into the first floor of Cottazon and pushing everything around.
Yeah.
And with Milton, it was a direct hit on Sarasota. Mm-hmm. And I was sure that some of those windows are going to break, in the house, because it's just the stained glass, basically. Mm-hmm. It's just this colored glass in leading. So it's leaded glass. And a lot of I think there's a fair amount of that glass that isn't original glass, but there's no buffer there. It's just the window, and that's it.
It's gone, yeah.
And for various reasons, there's reasons why it's not wise to put protection up.
Just with the marble,
like storm windows or something like that.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of different reasons why we have chosen not to do that.
Well, and even with shutters to put up, you don't want to drill into the marble or the stone and hurt the integrity of the building. Yeah, I get that.
And that's part of it. But the amazing thing is because I think because lead flexes, I think all the windows just kind of went with the wind, and they just flexed with the wind, and it was fine.
And
I was amazed.
Right,
I was
and
like,
that's something,
this is crazy.
And that's something that when they built it, I mean, how old is that building?
It'll be 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been more than Milton and Helene go through there.
Or it is 100. Ringling's going to celebrate its centennial soon, so.
But, you know, it's, I'm sure, gone through its fair share of hurricanes.
Yeah. So yeah, it has.
I'm sure whoever built it and did that understood that's what needed to be done with it. So, yeah, that's hard too. Well, you certainly have had a fun journey with everything you've done and the road you took to get there. So keep up the good work.
Thanks. I'm only, let's see, I graduated from grad school 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's crazy to think of that.
A lot in a short amount of time.
I've got about 20 years left, so we'll see.
We'll
see how I fare.
Perfect. Well, Emily, thank you. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Folks, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Share this with your friends. Go to a museum. It's fun. Something different.
There's lots of museums.
Exactly. Don't just watch the same thing on Netflix over and over again. Go out to a museum and experience some culture in your life. Mm-hmm. And make sure you, like I said, subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and we will see you in the next episode.